Well, good afternoon and welcome back to day 2 of the Google Analytics Bootcamp. We've got Chris Edwards back with us for another day of Google Analytics awesomeness. A lot of information covered yesterday, and if you haven't gotten over to the chat room yet, make sure you do so. The link to which is there in the chat pane of the GoToWebinar control panel. The password is there as well. And once you're there, you'll find the chat room for today's event, where that is the best place to ask your questions. We do not use the questions feature of the GoToWebinar control panel. We don't usually watch that, so if you have a question that's asked there, we may not see it. But if it's in the chat room, we'll be sure to grab it out. You'll find on the page for the chat the slides from yesterday, as well as the video replay from yesterday, and download links for the video and the chat log from yesterday as well. So lots of good stuff. We try to have that up quickly for you so you can review. We'll try to do that again today also. So lots of neat stuff coming up for day 2. Chris is going to be on in just a second and tell us all of what we're going to cover. Let me just remind you, this is day 2 of 3 days. So we'll be back tomorrow as well from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock Central for the wrap-up date. And we're looking forward to a great day today. We will be taking a break in the middle, and you can feel free to ask your questions throughout the webinar here in the live chat. It's always helpful to me if you preface your question with the word question in all uppercase. That way we're sure to grab that out and get it asked to Chris when that time comes. My name is Nathan Ingram. I'm the host here at iThemes Training, and it's my privilege to welcome back Chris Edwards to iThemes Training. Hey, Chris, welcome back. Looking forward to day 2. Tell us what we're going to cover.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to be back, and today is going to be a very full day. So we had during the beginning there, we talked about some of the things that people learned from yesterday and just scratching the surface, and I think that was a really great analogy. Google Analytics has a lot of stuff. Today, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into it. And we're going to get a little bit further down into it. There's a lot of stuff with Google Analytics, but we're going to cover some of those most used, deeper, advanced items. So today, we're going to jump in, obviously, and we're going to talk about some advanced admin things. We're going to talk about, from yesterday, some people did talk about moving properties and referral exclusions. So we're going to go ahead and cover those in the beginning here. And then we're going to kind of jump into channel groupings, custom dimensions, calculated metrics. We'll stop and have a quick little question and answer session so that we can kind of cover those items. And then we're going to jump into the live demo portion, which is always very exciting. Today, Google Analytics seems to be running back up to speed. So we should be able to do that today with a live demo showing how custom reports work, and also talking about shortcuts, annotations, custom alerts. And then at that point, we'll do another question and answer time with a quick 5-minute break. And then we'll jump into the e-commerce section, and that's where we're going to kind of go over all the more in-depth stuff related to e-commerce, and that'll kind of fill out the rest of day 2. Tomorrow, we'll be talking about creating custom dashboards and how we can view all of this data that we've learned in these first 2 days on how to collect. All right, so I'm just going to jump right into it, and we're going to start out with the advanced admin functions. We do have a lot to get through, so I do want to go ahead and just kind of jump into this. And we're going to talk about first how we move properties from one account to another. Yesterday, the question came up when we talked about how at account levels, you can have up to 50 properties under each account. But then someone mentioned, well, what if I want to move it to another? This could be because maybe you sold that portion or that business or that website out from under your current one, but it's listed under your account and you want to put it into the new owner's account. Or it could even be if you have a client who's now moved to another provider, you may want to move it to that different account so that the client can, take their historical data with you. Google added this actually in 2016, so it's kind of a new feature when you look at overall how long Google Analytics has been around. And this is one that analytics users like myself have been begging Google to add for a very long time. So there was a lot of celebration when they added this. Seemed like a very small thing, but there's a lot of back-end stuff that has to happen in order for these things to work. So you can move a property from one account to another, and as we talked about, all that historical data will come over. Also, the other things to note is your Universal Analytics ID. That's that UA code that you see. It will not change. Yesterday, we talked about how the account structure works with an account is your UA code, and each view technically has -1, -2. Well, so that when you move an account, they want to make sure you don't have to change out all your codes and change out any information. So the only time that's going to be a little bit different is when you move one property into a different account. It will keep the old UA code so that it does not have to be changed. That's a really important thing to note, so you don't have to worry about having to go in and get your developer to change everything, go change everywhere you put the UA code and all that mess. It's gonna copy over. You also need to realize it's not duplicating or copying the property. It is actually moving that entire property over. So this is not a way that if you wanted to just copy it and start with, another piece. There is currently not a way to copy a property. You can only move the entire property. All the views and everything within those views, such as filters, settings, dashboards, goals, annotations, all of those different items, they all move with it. So you don't have to go back in and reset up all that. It's really simple to do. I'm going to show you here how easy it is to move these, and everything goes with it. You also, one of the biggest questions I hear is, oh, am I going to have to reconnect my AdWords or my Google Webmaster Tools? I'm sorry, Google Search Console. It used to be called Webmaster Tools. Google Search Console, and do I have to move all of that, my AdWords link, all of those different property linking we talked about yesterday? Do I have to reconnect all of those when we move it to a different account? Absolutely not. All of those will stay connected so that they will already be in there when you move the account. So how do this? Simply, when you go into admin, you're going to go over to the account property, and it's under property settings. When you're inside of property settings, if you have proper access to move these, you can move them. I'm going to actually jump back one slide because I want to talk about user levels, and the notes are on the previous slide here. You have to have account level permissions for managed users and edit permissions, and on both the original account and the account you're moving it to. I wanted to go ahead and address that because that's the one area that I often run into is somebody goes and they try to move it to another provider's account and they don't have that high enough level of access to move it. So if that does come into play, let's say you're moving it from, you have a new agency taking over and they do not want to give you access. Here's a pro tip of how you can overcome that. If you're moving it to another company who will not give you the access that's needed, simply create a new account that you can obviously set your access level to be high enough, move it into that account, and then set them on that account to have manage users and edit permissions. And then they can, at that point, do what they want on their side. They can either move it into another account, or you could actually set their user level up and then drop yourself off of that account. That's the way that you can easily move it if the account you're moving it to will not give you high enough level access. So if you have high enough level access, when you go into property settings, you'll see right up at the top, there's that move property button. If you do not see that move property button, you do not have high enough level access to move that property, and you're going to need to reach out to the administrator of that account and ask for them to bump your user level or your user account level to be high enough so that you can move the property. When you hit the move property button, you're gonna get displayed with this screen. There's a lot of text on here. This is basically just kind of, warning you about what you're going to do. Pay attention to which destination account you're moving it to. And I know that kind of sounds a little crazy to say, but was with anything, double check that before you hit start move. Always double check every single thing that you're about to do. I always, whenever I move it, I always do keep existing property and view permissions. What this will do is anybody who technically had access to the account will have that same level of access on this new account. Now, if you're dropping off all of the old users, then you can go with the second one and you can set up different permissions that are based off of that account, and it removes everybody else that had permissions. I don't like doing it that way. I do like to go ahead and make sure I move all the users over, because then if they're working with another partner, another ad partner, you may end up dropping them off, and it creates a whole new amount of work for everybody to add those users back in. And then obviously there's a whole bunch of, terms and conditions you basically got to select. So read over that, make sure that all that works for you, and then go ahead and hit start move. Once you hit start move, it will move over. It's almost instant. It takes a few seconds to load, and then the property is moved. There's not a whole lot of waiting time that you have to do with this. It's pretty quick. It moves over pretty quick. So it's a pretty fast thing to do. And you don't have to wait days or anything like that. Everything will move. All your tracking will still continue even when you move it. There's no pause in the tracking itself. All right, so in addition to that, someone brought up referral exclusions yesterday. And what they were talking about is what happens if someone goes to PayPal to complete their transaction and they come back to their site. Technically, they show up as a referral from PayPal. So this is where referral exclusions come in. They'll basically exclude traffic from any kind of domain that you choose from showing up in your referrals report. So the example yesterday that someone was talking about was, let's say they went to your domain, made a purchase, and that purchase happened on the transaction happened on PayPal, and then they're sent back to that site again for the thank you page and to continue browsing their site. If you do not have PayPal set up as a referral exclusion, basically the way that traffic would show up is when it came to your domain, they started a session. And then when they left and went to PayPal and they came back from PayPal to your domain, they've now started a new session. And that new session shows PayPal as the referral. Well, because that was just a piece of the puzzle of completing that transaction, you most likely don't want that. So if you set up paypal.com as a referral exclusion, when they come back to your site from PayPal, it would then continue that first session as if they never had left your website. And it does still have to fit within the session length, which by default is set to 30 minutes. So if they go to PayPal and they sit at PayPal for 31 minutes, then it would start a new session because there's been no activity. But as long as it's within that 30-minute window that they come back, it will just continue off of their old session as long as that referral is put in as a referral exclusion. So when do you use these? For example, third-party payment systems such as PayPal or any other ones, you have to go off-site, complete your transaction, and come back. If you have multi-domain websites like domain.com and shop.domain.com, and they're kind of jumping between different ones. For example, we actually have with our site, we have a point where they go off our site to verify authentication, and it's our authentication server that's based off of Heroku, and it has a different domain. It's auth.datadrivenlabs.io. They go to there, they do their thing, and then they actually get put back into our site. I have set that one up as a referral exclusion because I do not want to. I want to continue tracking that data across there, and I don't want to lose just because they left and came back. If there's other domains, you can always find these by going to acquisition. All traffic referrals. That report, you'll be able to take a look and see if there's other domains that you need to possibly exclude. This is you may be using different third parties you don't even think of that are doing this. So if you just go there and you see referrals and you're like, that should not be a referral, that's just a processing site, and just jump in there and come back, go ahead and add them in as a referral exclusion. So the way you do this is within the admin section, it's going to be under account, property, and then tracking settings. And then you'll see referral exclusion list as an item to select. When you go in here, you'll be able to see add referral exclusion, and you'll have the domain name that you can add in. And if you add a new one, you can add a different one. So for example, paypal.com. After you do that, it's already set up. It will not go backwards. That's the one thing to remember. So if you've had this happen, this is only for data going forward. So realize that when you make this change, it's not going to fix how you've been tracking your data. It's only going to fix your data going forward. So I do want to make sure people understand that. I have a lot of people who add referral exclusion in and they send a message and say, still not working. All my stuff still shows as PayPal. All your former stuff should show as PayPal. All your new stuff should be properly tracking. All right. So I kind of want to jump in and talk about default channel grouping. So default channel grouping, everyone always is wondering, what is channel groupings? This is where Google applies a set of rules to basically figure out what are your traffic sources. So yesterday we talked about under the acquisition channel or a report, we talked about under the all traffic channels report, we're able to see organic search, direct, referral, email, social, all those different items. And Google has rules built into their system that figure out if it's organic search. So if it sees it coming from Bing search, if it sees it coming from obviously Google search, it marks that as organic. Direct traffic obviously is when somebody comes to your site from nowhere else. So they pretty much type your URL straight into the browser and come straight to your site. And then referral, we just talked about that. That's when someone clicks over from another website. There's a bunch of pre-built items in there that are able to track that. Social, for example, they're able to pick up and say, well, if the referral is Facebook or the referral is Twitter, they came from a social network. So it puts that as a channel of social. There's going to be times where you're going to want to edit these channel groupings. So what we can do is we can edit these channel groupings by going under the channel settings within our view. So if you go to admin and you select your account, select your property, and then you select the view, because the channel groupings do apply only to the view, you'll see under channel settings, channel grouping. So with channel grouping, you'll get this screen here that everything should say, if you have never changed anything here, they'll all say system defined. You'll see actually social, we have system and user defined, and I'm going to show you what happened there and why I did that. But you'll notice you have all the different channel groupings, and you also are able to define a new channel if you would like to set up a new channel besides the pre-built ones that are in here. So when you, I'm sorry, let's go back over here. So we're going to want to add something for social. And so to do that, all you do is you hit the little edit icons, that little pencil icon there. When you click on that pencil icon, you'll have a screen that opens like this. So you're going to have system defined channel matches social. There's not a way to edit how Google defines those channels. They're just system defined. And so you'll see that inside of here and how that's set up. I would leave those the same. Don't change that first one. But if you want to add another item to it, you can click on the minus sign, which means to exclude, the or sign, which means if it matches system defined channel or it matches this other item we set up, or you can do and. Remember, if you do and, it means both have to match versus or means one or the other can match. Now, in this example, I'll explain what we did here and why this is important. So we kind of talked about how you do it. I want to talk about the why behind doing this. Because I use CoSchedule, I use a social media app to help push out all of our social media posts. And we use a system called CoSchedule. With CoSchedule, we can add UTMs, which is what we talked about yesterday. When you add a UTM will override any kind of social channel that's coming in, and it will override the source. So in this case, the campaign matches CoSchedule. So the campaign source is actually going to be set as CoSchedule, and it would not technically show up as social because CoSchedule puts their name in as the source rather than putting in the source being the a social media network. So I wanted to see, since all these are posting over onto social media, I wanted to see these pop up in my default channels as social because everything was social. So what I did is I added this as an OR rule. I said if the campaign exactly matches CoSchedule, which is what the UTM has it set to, that it is also part of the default social channel grouping. This allows me now I can still pull it up under the campaigns reports, as we talked about yesterday with UTMs. But now when I'm looking at my channel groupings, all of those will come under social and not under referral, which is what they would come under before. So that helped obviously clean up everything so that I was able to easily see all of my social traffic and how that was performing. Now, do remember, when you make a change in here, this is only going forward as well. So this is not going to affect your historical data. And so that brings us to our next piece. When you're in there, you're going to also notice there's another thing called custom channel grouping. I'm going to talk about this and then I'm going to tell you not to use it unless you really want to. So what's the difference between default and custom channel groupings? So a custom channel grouping, it's only going to affect the display of your data, not the underlying data itself. So when we talked about the default, we talked about how it affects everything going forward. That's because it's affecting the data as it comes in and marking it as such. Custom channel grouping works similar to advanced segments, where it can actually apply across old data on your site as well, and it will affect all of the display of that. So that's actually a pro. That's actually a good thing. That's something I wish default channel grouping did. Now, the other thing is, anyone at any access level can create a custom channel grouping. So with the default channel grouping, you have to have edit permissions in order to be able to, on that view, in order to be able to set up a default channel grouping. With a custom channel grouping, you can set it up if you only have read and analyze as a setting. However, only that user is going to be able to see that channel groupings. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't like custom channel grouping. Because with most of my clients, it's not just me pulling the reports. I am a user on their account, and I'm setting up their analytics so that they can log in and they can pull their own reports and they can see everything. What happens is, if I set up a custom channel grouping, only I'm going to be able to see that data, and only I'm going to be able to utilize that data, which means they're still going to see it how it displays based off the default channel groupings. So this is going to actually cause a lot of issues with the reporting, because when I'm showing them one thing, I'm showing, hey, you got all this stuff from social channels because I set up, for example, CoSchedule, right? They're going to be looking at it going, oh, well, no, I have a whole bunch more referral because CoSchedule showed up as referral for them. They're seeing it as referral because I only changed it the way I see it, not the way they see it. So that's one of the biggest reasons why I'm not a big fan of using custom channel groupings and sticking to the default channel groupings. Default channel groupings can only be used, though, with acquisition, overview, and channel reports. Now, custom can be used with all those, but also used with multi-channel funnel reports and attribution reports, which are under the conversion section of set of reports inside of Google Analytics. If you're using those, we're not going to actually cover those in depth. So this is one of those when I talk about scratching the surface. We could easily talk about Google Analytics for 40 plus hours and still not cover every last little piece that's in there. Multi-channel funnel reports and attribution model reports, those are going to be for you to really look into your different types of conversions and how those are converting. And if using channel groupings is very important for you in that section, you can use custom channel groupings. Most people don't, because they're able to do it just with segments, and they're able to make the views happen the way they want them to. But if you're using those items, definitely look into custom channel groupings and see if that's something that you might want to do. So the next item I want to talk about is custom dimensions and custom metrics. So a custom dimension, it's going to allow you to combine your Google Analytics data with non-Google Analytics data. So you can pull other items in there that's not standard to Google Analytics, so that you can kind of customize what's being shown. The basic will show up as a primary. They can show up as primary dimensions inside of custom reports. You can also use them with segments, with the advanced segments, or even as secondary dimensions inside of the standard reports. And we're going to talk about custom reports in part 2 today, and so you'll understand how these can actually play in. One thing I do want to say is you're limited to 20 dimensions and metrics per property. I did put a link in here that goes to Google Analytics help file on dimensions and metrics, because this is a really, really in-depth subject to really get deep into dimensions and metrics. It would be probably about a 2 or 3 hour discussion, but I did want to kind of talk about the just kind of overall what these things are. If you hit the more information link on these slides, when you download the slides, it'll take you to a page that's going to really dive in more in depth if these are something that you want to use with your site. There are three different types of dimensions. Basically, you have a hit, a session, and a user. This is based off of where they get set. A hit means that the dimension gets set just for that one page view or that one hit. A session means that once that dimension is applied, which is applied through custom code, once that dimension is applied, it follows you through the rest of your session. And then user follows the user and stays with the user. So if they leave your site and they come back into another session, that dimension will stay with that user through the rest of their visits on your site. So for example, if you bring up a standard report that says page view, you can put secondary dimension, and if it's set on session, you'll see that page view through their whole session versus seeing that just on that one hit. With custom dimensions, I probably just confused you with what I said, so it's actually easier for me to just kind of show you here what an example. I pulled this over from Moz. I thought this was a really good use of custom dimensions. They were setting custom dimension for user occupation. And so you'll notice here is a secondary dimension. We're able to add to our report a user occupation secondary dimension field. So we have our returning visitor, which is our normal user type that we have. And then what we do is we have user occupation as our secondary dimension. And so now you can see that it's pulling in contractor, retired, teacher, and all these other different occupations are being pulled in. So that's kind of a great way you can use that. I do want to talk about how I use it. One of my sites, just kind of give another example. When we talked, we work with several hospitals with their analytics. And one of the things that happens is we actually have a tool where they can search for and find a doctor that matches what they're looking for. Because they can search this site, and this is one site that then points them over to an appointment form, we wanted to set inside the analytics so we can follow through the rest of their stay what hospital the doctor they chose is at. So we set up a custom dimension that actually pulls hospital. We also set up one for region. So once they click over, we set it as a session custom dimension so that once they go to a page and they hit that they want to book an appointment with that one doctor, from that point forward, it actually follows them through the rest of their session, which means when they convert and they become a conversion, it will have this dimension attached to it. It has the hospital name. That allows us inside of the custom reporting, which is Data Studio, that allows me to make it so that you can filter conversions by the hospital name. So that allows us to say, Hospital A, I want to see how many conversions Hospital A had. I want to see how many conversions Hospital B had. Because Google Analytics does not naturally track the hospital, because I'm sure several people on this are not using it for tracking just their hospital, they're using it for tracking their type of business. That's something that we would want to set up as a custom dimension. So using these custom dimensions and predefined metrics, there are going to be times where you're going to want to create a calculated metric. So this is where we can take certain predefined metrics or custom metrics and we can combine them together to create our own metric that Google Analytics does not currently have. So Google Analytics has recognized that they may not always have what you're looking for. So they've created this way for you to use their system to create your own. Now, the downside to this, you're limited to only 5 calculated metrics per view. I really hate that number because it's so low. I wish that this was at least at 20, like the other ones are. But unfortunately, they do set it to 5 calculated metrics. I'm assuming this has something to do with processing speed and so forth. Now, all these numbers I'm giving you of limits, they are different if you are using Google Analytics 360. And I normally don't assume people are using it because the price tag of that runs in the range of 6 figures per month. That's used for very large corporate companies. But if you are using Google Analytics 360, these are higher. Custom dimensions, for example, are at 200 custom dimensions per property. And these calculated metrics, I believe, are at 50 under Analytics 360. But For the sake of most people here who are using the free version, it is limited to 5 calculated metrics per view. So to set up these calculated metrics, you're going to go over to admin, go to account, property, and then go to the view. And then under view, you'll see calculated metrics. It should have a little beta tag in there. Do remember, this is still something technically testing. So I haven't seen any major issues with it, but just realize that they have a beta tag on it, meaning it may not 100% work all the time. So just, keep that in mind. But you basically create, you name what you're going to call the item. The external name will automatically populate. This is used just for APIs. The formatting type, when you go through there, you'll have float. You have things like percentage and number. So this kind of says how it's going to be basically be displayed. And then you have formula. So with formula, if you just start typing, if you know the metrics, the metrics that you're going to want to pull in. So for example, sessions, you just start typing sessions and it will give you the ability to click on that. And when you click on that, it'll put the variable in there that it needs to be. So for example, on here, we're wanting to do sessions per user. So we're going to do sessions divided by users, and that's going to give us the sessions per user. To give you some examples, though, of what this could be, is we have sessions per user. You can do sessions divided by users. Page views per user, same thing. Do page views divided by users. Goals per user to come up with a conversion rate by the user level, because currently goals are set up by session. Conversion rates are set up by sessions. You would actually change it to be a percentage, and then you would say goal completions divided by users, and it will give you that information. Another showing you how it can get a little more complex and you can have a little bit more fun with this is looking at value per session. So this is actually taking revenue plus the goal value and adding those two numbers together, and then it's dividing that by users, and then we're able to find out what the value per, I shouldn't say per session, it's to say value per user. We're finding out what the value per users is. If we want to find out value per session, we just change that last item to say sessions, not users, and it will pull that in. So the reason I kind of showed these examples, I could have made this page very long and showed you. I actually went to look to see if I can find a couple places that had some other ideas of how to do this, and I found ones that had lists of 20, a list of 50, if you Google search Google Analytics calculated metric examples, you'll find articles that just go on and on and on and just give you a whole bunch of different different things that you can set up for. So that's why I put this little message, sky is the limit. But remember, you only get 5. So while you can go crazy and have some fun with this, you also are very limited in how many you can do. So really think about what you're going to bring in and what you're going to set up as a calculated metric, and figure out what is the most important for you to know. But this is nice because a lot of times I see people, they pull the data down or they have a calculator. I've done this a lot in the past where I would have a calculator and I'd be manually calculating numbers out for people. And by putting a calculated metric in, it makes it so that everyone else can just view it. They can actually just see it as a metric inside. And you can pull this into your customer reports and see that data for inside your customer reports, which we're going to cover here right afterwards. But before we jump into those customer reports, I did want to jump in. We went through a lot of those. We went kind of quick, so I wanted to save some room for us going through the customer reports, and I wanted to save some time also for us to talk about e-commerce. But I do want to go ahead and open up right now and find out if there's some questions in regards to these items that we just covered.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so a number of questions have popped in, and if you have a question that has not yet been asked, please enter that in the chat room. I think I have all of them up to this point recorded here for Chris. So if you haven't typed yours in yet, do that now. We'll take the next few minutes for questions. And by the way, let me just, I did mention something in the chat a couple of minutes ago. It'll be very helpful to you if, while Chris is going through these bits and pieces, if you have your own analytics open, so you can sort of follow along on a live analytics data while he has slides open. So that might be helpful to you. Okay, so Rebecca has a question having to do with referral sources. How does Google Analytics know the difference between a link that you clicked in an email and direct as a source?
All right. So with that, it will count if they click it from the email. Um, I believe they're going from webmail, like Gmail or any of those items. I think that their system defined will see that they're coming from webmail. But if you're using an email client, I use, for example, Polymail. But if you use like Apple Mail or Outlook or any of those items, and you click and it opens, it will show up as direct if that link is not tagged. Now, most email newsletter programs that are sent out, this is where we were talking yesterday about UTMs. Most of them are tagged with UTMs, and they actually have the medium set to be email or newsletter. And so those will come over with those in there. But otherwise, it will come back if it comes through something like Outlook or something like that. The link will open up and pull over that it is direct traffic. And so that's why we say use UTMs and use your channel grouping to get around that if you're using, your own newsletter.
All right. Brian would like to know when it comes to how many accounts you can have. You described a scenario yesterday where you had 3 different users and so forth. How many Google Analytics accounts, which we know each are capable of 50 properties, can you have per login?
I don't believe there's a number on accounts. Uh, I've because you can be added on as a user to other people's accounts, so they're technically not. They might not even be your accounts. Um, so you're added on as a user to be able to have permission to see those accounts. I do not believe they have a limit. I will have to double check, and I can let you know tomorrow for sure. Um, but as far as I know, I've never been cut off on how many accounts I can have. But then again, I've never been managing more than at the account level. I've never been managing more than about, I think the most I had at one time was 200 accounts, and I wasn't cut off at that point. So
That'll probably be more than most of us will have. All right. So a number of questions here about they're having to do with social media. Um, Steve would like to know in reports for referral traffic from social. He says he gets a ton of not set listings. Are those undefined in the channel group, or is there another issue that's causing that that you would know of?
so they're being marked as social, but uh, what? So they're saying not set is what you're saying, Nathan.
That's yes.
Um, I'm not sure because I don't know exactly how Google's defining their system setting. I would go check your channel grouping, and make sure that there's the default channel grouping, and make sure there's not a custom item that's in there that's pulling something into the social channel that shouldn't be there. If it is still set at system, um, it it could be that when it comes over, it has a UTM tag that shows it the medium being social, but Google was unable to realize that it was what that referral source was, so it wasn't able to attribute it to Facebook, Twitter, or anything like that. That's a potential, but without really looking into it, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head why, because that's a little odd for me. It'd be something that um, I'd have to actually really dig in deep to understand why it's doing that. But I would check to make sure that you don't have something like a user setting in a custom setting inside default channel grouping that's pulling in potentially direct traffic or something along those lines.
Gotcha. Rebecca would like to know earlier you mentioned CoSchedule, but do most social media management tools accommodate UTMs?
Um, most most have a setting to auto tag your posts with UTMs. I know CoSchedule does. I know Sprout Social does. I haven't used some of the others, so I couldn't tell you for sure. But the other thing is, you can always, with any of those social media tools, you can always generate a UTM using a UTM generator and stick your own UTM inside of those. I like those ones just because I'm able to stick my link in there and they automatically generate the UTM for me, so I don't have to go and generate my own UTM. So just check with your social media providers. I believe since Sprout and CoSchedule have that as an option, most of them do. It might depend on what plan level you are with them. I know some of them, I think Sprout or one of them has a you can't use this until you're at until you're paying X amount of dollars per month.
Gotcha. Question here from my own worst enemy: would you referral exclude social media, thinking that people who maybe clicked over there might come back to your site?
No, I wouldn't, because if you do that, you might mess up the traffic sources as social. What I like to do, there's a whole debate. This is a big debate out there in general with web development. So you make your own decision how you want to do this. But I like to, if I'm sending them off site to like social media, I always have it set to open in a new tab. That way my site's still open in the background just in case they're just trying to quickly find my site. But there is a lot of opinions on that. There's opinions that, that you shouldn't open up a new tab. The user can open up a new tab. For those who don't know, if you actually hold down the command key or control key when you're clicking a link, it'll automatically open in a new tab. It's a tidbit of information that some people I find have never heard of. So just quick note for anyone who's clicking on links. But I would not do that. I would allow it, because if they go to the social media, unless that social media links back to you, they're going to end up typing your site back in anyways, which will make it direct. Or if they hit the back button, it will go back and continue that session. It's not going to start a new session.
Good deal. One more question. Both Barbara and Rebecca had very similar questions here, just in regard, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, but just in regard of how much Google knows about us. Barbara was curious how Google knows the visitor's occupation, and Rebecca was wondering where the data to fill in a custom dimension about a user comes from.
All right. Let me jump back real quick. We are going to click this link and we'll see what it does here. All right. All right. So this is that article I was telling you about with custom dimensions. There's a lot of stuff here, right? What you're doing, Google does not know that information about you. What's happening is you're actually setting that information through code. So we're actually setting our dimensions and we're sending that information. So this would be, if you have that information and you want to pass it into analytics, you can. Now, I do want to say, when I say that, remember GDPR. Remember, if you're working with medical sites, HIPAA compliance. Make sure you're not passing personally identifiable information over inside of there. So just keep that in mind when you are sending information into analytics, that you want to make sure that you're not sending anything that can violate GDPR, HIPAA, or any other privacy laws based off of your jurisdictions. But you're sending that information over through code. So when you're sending that, it's going to pull from there. So what, in that case, in that Moz example, they were pulling user occupation data because they have it in their database for that user. So they may collect it when you sign up for whatever account or whatever. They ask you your occupation. And so they were able to pull that data because they have it on that user using their site. Most likely it's a logged in user for that example. For my example, where I was talking about using the hospital, when they go to that, we know, because in the database, we know that doctor is associated with this particular hospital. So we're able to pull from our database inside the code and send this in to analytics, because we know that from our data that we already have in our database.
All right, good deal. I believe that gets us to the end of our questions here, so we can jump into the next section.
All right. Give me a second. It threw me to a new spot. There we go. All right. So what we're going to do, actually, I did not need to jump back in here. We're going to go ahead and dive into custom reports. So with this, we're going to cover and talk about custom reports, shortcuts, alerts, annotations. So a custom report is basically a report that you create versus those standard reports that we talked about yesterday. So we talked about yesterday all those different reports under acquisition, right? We talked about all the reports that were under behavior or and conversions. Those are all pre-built default reports that Google has for you to use. There are going to be times that you're going to want to pick your own dimensions and you're going to pick your own metrics and you're going to want to see your own report inside of Google Analytics. And you don't really want to see other reports because these are going to have you can pull your custom dimension, your calculated metrics, all those other items into these custom reports. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about how you can create those and how those work. So I'm going to switch gears here. All right. I'll pull over this browser. And just make sure. Yes, we can see that. All right. So we're here in our demo account for the Google Merchandise Store. This is not my website, but this is the Google Store. So it has a lot of data coming in, live data. So we have a lot of really cool stuff that we can look at. So to create a custom report, as we talked about, each one of these items here, these are all predefined reports. These are built into Google. You have all this different information we can pull up. We talked about going under acquisition, for example. We were just talking about channels, so let's pull up channel report, right? And so you see all this different information in here. Lots of really good information to look at. You can really kind of dive into here. But what we want to look at is we want to come over here and we want to create our own report because we want to see our own information. So we're going to actually come under here, go to customization. So that's going to be over here right under home. You see reports to say here, it's the first item. These are the dashboards we talked about yesterday that actually mentioned are going away. I think if we actually click here, yeah, see it. Here's that message I was telling you about. It says try Google Data Studio. But under here, you also have right under dashboards, you've got custom reports. When you click on custom reports, if you have no reports, the section will be blank and you'll just be able to create a new custom report. So I kind of want to show you how these work. They also have the message here on Google Data Studio. Hopefully they're not taking custom reports away. I don't think they are, but they do try to push you over to use Data Studio for this. So we click new, create a new custom report. We have the ability of creating a new custom report. We're going to call this BootCamp report. So you have the ability of creating different tabs. And so what I'm going to do is I want to show you just real quick. We're going to go ahead and we're going to want to see what different OSs people are using when they come into our site. We want to create a report based off of that. And let's go ahead and create one based off of browser. And if you follow along here, I'll explain what we're doing. We're going to be able to pick what type. Is this the Explorer? Is this just going to be a table? Is this going to be a map overlay? For this one, we're going to do the Explorer. That's that normal view that you see under all of these other items. So let's go ahead and create. These are our different metric groups here. We're just going to keep it as metric group. We're not going to change that. But what we're going to do is we can just call this metric group OS. What we're going to want to do is we're going to want to see sessions, and I'll show you here. It's actually might be easier to do it this way. Oh, nope. Hold on. Let's get out there and try it again. We're going to come down here under users because we're going to see different metrics based off of these users, right? So I want to see, we want to see page views. We want to see sessions, which actually I'm just going to type it so we can find it a little quicker to show you how you're able to pull items up really quick. So here's sessions. I want to see the bounce rate. There's bounce rate. And let's see exits. All right. So I'm going to pull these 4 items in. And what we're going to do is we're going to pull these in. We talked about this. This tab's going to be for operating system. So we're going to go ahead and pull up operating system. We're going to pull that in there. And then we're going to stop this one here. Now you see we have the ability to add an extra dimension. I'm going to show you the difference if you add that or you don't. So on this one, we're not going to add it. We're going to go over here to browser. And we're going to kind of do the same thing. So what do? We did page views. Sessions. And just for the sake of time, we're just going to do page views and sessions. Then we're going to come down here and we're going to, well, let's go ahead for this one. Let's go ahead and add a metric group. So this will be, just so I can show you this, right? We'll call this page view / sessions. And then this one we'll call bounces. So let's go ahead and add the bounce right here. And we'll add exits as well. So I want to show you the difference between creating metric groups as well, so you have that down. All right, so for this one, because it's going to be browsers, let's go ahead and look for browser. And now what I want to do is I want to say, okay, well, we want to add a secondary a drill down dimension. So let's go in the browser and let's say browser version as well. And so now we have a drill down for browser version. We can even add this one more for fun. Let's add browser size. So now we have it broken down 3 different ways. You can also add filters in here if you want to add a filter. So you want to have this custom report set to a certain filter, and then you would select a view. We're going to do it in the view that we're already in, so we're not going to change that. But with adding a filter, we can obviously say that if we wanted to only add people from a certain country, we can say include country that matches United States, and we'd pull that for just ones in the United States. But we're not going to do that for this report. Once you're done filling out this information, you just hit save. Once you hit save, it's going to actually open this custom report. So now, this looks just like all these other reports that we were already looking at, but this is pulling exactly what we wanted to pull. So here's our tabs, OS and browser. So with OS, we have OS selected, and you can see here's our metrics that we put in. We have page views, sessions, bounce rate, exits. All of that information is being pulled over here, and here's our operating system. This is our dimension that we pulled in. So you'll see that we have on the Google Merchandise stores, Macs actually outweigh Windows at the Google store. But you notice we can't click on any of these. We can't do anything with them. We just see them. I want to show you now with browser how that works. So if you remember with browser, we actually did drill downs on the dimension. So when you come into browser, you'll notice now these are linked. And so this is the same thing. This is just pulling our page views and sessions, right? When you click on one of these items, now we're going to drill down into that first thing, which remember was the version numbers. Now we're into browser version. We can actually click and drill down again because we added that second drill down that showed us browser size. And so now we can do the browser size. You can actually come back and you can go backwards from here if you want. So we're going to go back to all. We're still on that browser tab. So as you notice with the browser tab, we also added metric groups, if you remember, across the top. So you have your different metric groups. So we had the page view sessions. If we switch it over to bounces, here you go. We got now the bounces. So you have the bounce rate and the exit rates. If you remember when we were doing this, that's interesting how it filtered this. The best way I like to describe this with the metric groups is these are actually more tabs and sub-tabs because each of those, that's unique just to that tab. So I'm going to go ahead and open back up real quick the edit screen. So let's say we're looking in here and we're like, oh, this is cool, but there's something I don't like about this. This isn't what I wanted. You can come back up here and you can go and you can edit this and you can change it at any time that you want. I'm going to leave this screen here just for a second, just so you can kind of get another view here of the different items. But as we talked about, here is our tabs, and we can add new report tabs. These are those metric groups, which are basically those sub tabs. And this is that dimension drill down that we did. So this could be with any of the different dimensions in here. And this is also where we're able to pull those custom dimensions that we talked about. This is also where we can pull calculated metrics in as well. Inside of here, you'd actually have your calculated metrics that you can pull in. Usually they will show up under other. I don't have any calculated metrics on this one. Oh no, I think there is. Revenue per user, that's a calculated metric. So you can pull that information in into this view from here. Okay, so that's going to be that's actually the custom report section. Now, once you've saved that, when you come back, custom reports, you will see that there's our report. It's saved here. So whenever we come in here and we get a custom reports, there's your report right there. Now you also have the ability to import from gallery. When you click on this import from gallery, this is going to open up that Google Solutions gallery that we were talking about yesterday. When you open this up, you can kind of come over here and you can look for different items and sort them. And it's already set to be type is custom report. And we can actually find a report that we want to bring over and then just hit import. And let's do it on this one, right? We'll hit import. This is actually import a whole bunch of custom reports for us. And we select our view, and now you see, so we're selecting the master view. And this is actually pulling over segments, a bunch of custom reports, even some dashboards as well. And these are those custom segments we talked about yesterday. It's going to pull all those over. We can unselect a couple of those if we don't want to bring them over, but we're going to go ahead and bring it over into this view. Make sure you are bringing it over into the right view. So this was my demo account. Where's my demo account? There we go, master view. So they are coming over into the demo account. And when we come down here, we hit create. Give it a second. We probably should have unchecked a few of those. And now it comes up and it's successful. And now we have all these different shared assets inside of here. So let's go back into our reports. And there's all those reports we just brought in. So there's actually some really cool stuff in here that can be pulled up. E-commerce traffic report. This is an e-commerce site. This is really cool to pull up. So you see all these different KPIs, all this different information coming over. We have PPC keyword. Actually, I don't know if this one will work because I don't know if they got some PPC going. But you see all these different little reports you're able to bring in. Social sharing report. Yeah, there's nothing there because they're not doing a social sharing with this. Even an SEO not provided analysis, which is an interesting report. It basically breaks down by landing page because they say that if you get not provided, at least if you look at landing page, you can kind of guess what they maybe were searching for. And so that's kind of the idea behind this report that they created here was to try to analyze, well, if they're landing here, they probably were searching for this certain term, drinkware. So somebody was probably searching for drinkware. So that's kind of how that's custom reports in a nutshell. Kind of diving in, you can really kind of have a lot of fun with this and really create a bunch of different reports that you want. You can share these reports out with anybody else that you want. You can actually export them as PDF and so forth. So these are really great if you have certain things. I probably shouldn't have clicked that. This is really great if you have a lot of things that you want to show off to people. Send off to your boss or whatnot. I do want to quickly show you another item called saved reports. It's also known as shortcuts. So at any point when we're looking at a custom report, so let's say we were looking inside channels here, right? And we were looking at it and we're like, okay, well, I want to focus on organic search. And then over here, while I'm inside of here, I want to go ahead and we're going to talk about adding, this is our advanced filter section. I'm going to talk about, I want to filter this data that I'm looking at without setting up a custom segment. We're already looking at organic search, but I want to look for let's actually look for a keyword, right? So we want to look for the keyword containing the not provided. And then we'll apply that, and now all we're seeing here is just the items that say keyword not provided. So let's say this is something I do on a daily basis, and I had to. You saw I just had to go do a couple of different things, type a couple things in there, and that can get a little annoying to do every single time that I come in here. So I can actually come up here and I can hit save, and we can call this channels by not provided. Hit OK. And then under saved reports now, this report that I have is going to be listed so that we can always quickly pull it up. So we have organic shells not provided, pull this up, and there we go. So now we actually are pulling this exact report. We've basically created a custom report by just saving that report. Another place you can do that is even under real time. Right here, you can do where it's create a shortcut. So if I want to create a shortcut to organic live traffic on my site, so this is one I go to all the time, then I can come over here and I can say create shortcut and traffic sources. We can call it organic traffic searches, traffic sources. And now when we come over here to saved reports, and we have organic traffic sources, there we go. So now we're pulling up that, and it's funny because you're going to see it as two different things. Some places it's going to have a little save icon. Other places are going to call it shortcut. I think that Google has different product teams that work on things, and I think they're not on the same page. So just remember, they're sometimes called saved reports, sometimes they're called shortcuts, but they both do the same thing, and they both go into your saved reports section. So that's a big piece I wanted to point out and make sure that you're aware of. I do this a lot on several of my accounts because there's certain reports I always filter by a certain thing, or I always try to look for a certain thing. Being able to save these to be able to jump to them really quick does save you a lot of time and a lot of effort. The last item under the customization section that I do want to cover real quick is custom alerts. This is something that a lot of people don't know that you can do with Google Analytics. You can actually set up an alert to email you when certain things happen. When you go into custom alerts, you can actually hit manage custom alerts, new alert. And then what we can do is we can call this lots of sessions. We want to apply it to the master view. We want to look at it each day, or it could be weekly or monthly. And we want it to send me an email, and then we can add an email address, which I'm not going to actually add the email address right now because I don't want to get emails on this demo account all day long. And we're going to say this applies to all traffic, and if sessions are greater than, say, if we had more than 1,000 sessions today, I wanted to send me an email and alert me by email that we had more than 1,000 sessions today. So this is a great way to know. You can set this based off revenue. You can set this based off kind of any metric that you want. And so, like, if you want to know that if you had more than 10 conversions today, you can set it to say, did I have more than 10 conversions? Or if you, on average, have a certain amount of visits to your site or a certain amount of conversions happen per day, you can actually set if it's less than, and say if it's less than 10 conversions, I want to be emailed because there's obviously something going wrong, because I should never have less than 10 conversions on my site. So I need to know so I can go and address the issue. So that's kind of where you can use alerts. Alerts are kind of fun to use. Don't set too many or you'll get spammed with a lot of emails, but definitely take a look at that, and you can set those up, or you can set them up for your clients as well. One last thing I do want to cover. It doesn't technically apply to the customization section, but it does apply to reports. So I do want to mention it. You have the ability to create annotations. That's fine. We don't want to save that. So let's say I'm in any of these reports. You have all this different data. Let's go ahead and just change it to, say, a couple months, right? So we have a whole bunch of months going on here. We can see all the different data coming through. But let's say I decide, let's say today I launched something. I launched a new homepage design, or or I got listed. I wrote a new blog article that was listed on iThemes.com, and I'm expecting a lot of traffic to come from it. I kind of want to know why I got that spike in traffic, because I know right now why I got it, but 2 months down the road, I may forget the exact day that iThemes linked to me or something. So if I come down here and I click on this icon, it's really, really small text, but you'll see over here is create annotation. If you got this minimized on your screen, it probably just looks like a blue line, but it says create new annotation. When you click on create new annotation, it's going to set it to the date here. You can change the date. So let's say we actually want to say that this item happened on the 13th of June, and we want to say cool stuff happened. You can set it to be shared, or you can set it to be private. If you set it to be shared, everybody who has access to this view is going to be able to see this item. Private means only you are going to be able to see this. I set this oh, I can't on this account because I don't have um, the Google demo accounts. I don't have high enough permission level, so I can only set it private. But if you have high enough permission level, which is usually edit permission, you have the ability to set to shared. We'll hit save. We can actually add a couple other ones real quick. So let's add one for June 7th. More stuff happened. I'll add that one in as well. So now when we're looking at this data here on the graph, you'll notice this will normally be collapsed when you come back in here. You'll notice these really tiny little comment boxes that are listed on each of these days. These are the ones that we just added in. So if you notice, this is on June 8th, which is the one we added. This one's on June 13th. And when you click on it, it'll open up these annotations so you can actually see what happened. So if all of a sudden right here we saw a huge traffic spike or a huge traffic dip, I can go, oh, well, there's a little annotation here. Let me click on that and see what happened. And when I click on it, it highlights which one that is. And I can go, oh, some stuff happened here. That might explain why this traffic changed up and why this traffic is performing this way. The other cool thing is, as you go through other reports on your site, so let's say we're inside of channels, those annotations, they will carry across all these reports. So here they are as well. I even believe they carry into our custom reports. Yep, they also pull over into your custom reports as well. So this is a really great way because you can put annotations in that go across your whole account. This is a great way if you write blog posts that you think is going to really take off. You send an email newsletter. We used to do it for any email newsletter we sent. We'd put annotations in so we can see if there was a spike, and then we can actually relate it back down to the data and see what was happening with all of those spikes. So I definitely wanted to show you that. I think that's a really cool feature of custom reports, and that I wanted to make sure that people were aware of existed. So at this point, I do want to go ahead and open up the floor for some questions, and then after this, we'll also take a break.
All right, so just a couple of questions have come in during this part. So if you have a question about this last section and you have not yet typed that in the chat room, please do so. JJ wanted to know why, and I think you've shown some of the reasons since he typed this question, but why would you use a custom report like this when Data Studio is available?
Well, that would be the exact reason why Google pretty much asked the same question with this little message they put across the top, where they tell you, hey, you want to see a new way to do it? Go try Google Data Studio. You might want to use these. These allow, I feel like there's a little bit more you can do with these than you can. Data Studio, you see what I want you to see in the way I want you to see it. Inside of Data Studio, this does give you the ability to apply some advanced segments. It gives you the ability to kind of still kind of play with the data, see those annotations, and see it all within the Google Analytics account. Ultimately, I wouldn't build a lot of custom reports when you can. It's going to be more of a. We'll show you Data Studio tomorrow, and so we're diving into the Data Studio dashboards. You'll be able to realize on certain data that, hey, this is data that I want to see in Data Studio. It's just part of a dashboard versus this is data that I do want to be able to manipulate and play with and quickly change inside of analytics. This is also kind of why, like I said, dashboards and custom reports inside of analytics, they're trying to push you to go check out Data Studio because most of this you can create also on that side.
Very good. One last question from Randy. He was wondering, can I see tag firings in a custom report?
If Randy can quickly clarify what he means by tag firings, does he mean from Google Tag Manager or is he talking about events?
Google Tag Manager.
So Google Tag Manager, when you fire a tag, the tag can be any type of item that you want to be. So you could fire a trigger, basically triggers a tag to fire. The tag is not actually associated with Google Analytics. The tag could be associated with anything in the world. It could fire a Facebook pixel, it could fire custom HTML. If you have it set up, you can fire a tag that creates a event. And there is we actually did a webinar with iThemes. It was a while ago, Nathan. I don't remember the exact date. It was, I think, last year. But we talked about Google Tag Manager and how you can set up different tags to fire and how you can have those tags fire Google events into analytics. So if you have it set up to fire events into analytics, yes, you can create a custom report that pulls events into there to see those, but it would have to be set. The tag would have to be set to fire a Google Analytics event.
Absolutely. And we did just drop the link for Google Tag Manager webinar, which was July of last year. It's been a while, Chris.
It has.
Link is in the chat room. So if you missed that one, Google Tag Manager is pretty awesome. I would encourage you to go head over and check that one out. Okay, we are at the end of our questions, so it's good time for a break. We're almost to 11 p.m. Central Time, so we'll come back at 2:17 Central Time, so a 5-minute break. Give you some time to stand up, take care of animals, or whatever else you need to do. So back at 17 minutes after the hour. All right, it is 2:17 p.m. Central Time, so we are back and ready to dive into the next section. Chris, what are we going to be covering in the last hour today?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, well, we're going to be covering e-commerce for the last section.
Fantastic. So lots of good data to get into here. So let's dive right in.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to just dive right into this and just talk about e-commerce analytics. We're going to start out kind of with what and why we want to track this, and then we're going to talk about the tracking and move into conversion funnels. All right, so what makes e-commerce tracking kind of different than goal tracking? Every time I talk about this, everyone's like, well, you already talked about goal tracking. Why are we talking about e-commerce? So goal tracking basically just shows you the number of conversions and kind of gives you an estimated value for the goal, right? E-commerce analytics is really cool because it dives actually a lot deeper. And it provides you the exact transaction amounts, also how each different product is performing. Basically, you have the ability to see a lot of different things. We're talking about revenue, average order value, average purchase quantity of a certain product, product revenue, time to purchase, checkout funnel, lifetime value, which if you're connected to KISS metrics, you can actually pull that information in, and a lot of different items as well. So the biggest things I always kind of say before we dive into this is not to replace your accounting software, because here's the thing: canceled orders, refunds, test orders, all of those get pulled in and don't always get pushed over. When you cancel an order down the road, it does not actually come over into Google Analytics. There is a way that you can actually do a refund process and push refunds up into analytics data through the API, but most systems don't automatically do process that. I think Shopify might, but most of them do not push up the refund. So you don't always show all your refunds if there was a refund in there. Test orders get pulled in and you can't remove that data. If an order gets canceled, it may still have processed in there. Also, when you start to get to over 250,000 sessions going on, you can actually start data sampling. Data sampling is where Google, on the free version, Google looks at it and says, there's too many in here for me to fully track. So I'm just going to grab a sample of your data and then I'm going to estimate that that's what's actually happening across all of it. So that's why we and then obviously people blocking analytics. So that's why I always tell people before we dive into this isn't going to match exactly your analytics number. If you go and you pull down your Shopify report, or you go and pull down your WooCommerce report, the numbers will not always match up exact, because we get people coming in and I've literally had someone upset because it was off by 50 cents. And I'm like, it's pretty close. And we're talking on over five digit or 5 digit a number, and they were like, well, it's off by 50 cents. I'm like, it's not that bad to be off. So always understand there will be a margin of error with this, and it won't always match up. Now, we're gonna go ahead and kind of dive in. And we're gonna talk. We're not just gonna talk Google Analytics e-commerce. We're gonna talk about the enhanced e-commerce. So, what is the enhanced e-commerce and standard e-commerce? You'll see it inside of Google Analytics as two different things, and I do want to talk about what the difference between them are, right? So under your standard reports, you have the e-commerce overview, the product performance, sales performance, transactions, and time of purchase. When you enable the enhanced reporting, it allows you also to check things like shopping behavior analysis, which is a funnel that you'll be able to see, and we'll look at that in here in a few minutes. Checkout behavior, product list performance, internal promotions. You can also even track your coupons. And then if you have affiliate codes, there's a way to actually track affiliate codes as well. Now, when you enable these have to be enabled at the code level. You do have to install code that pulls this information in. Google Analytics does not just automatically know what is happening on your shopping cart. So setting it up can be a little difficult. But one of the things with WooCommerce is an extension called Google Analytics Pro. If you go check out Google Analytics Pro, it's they've moved it where it's at. It's in their WooCommerce. WooCommerce changed the way they sell their products now, but within WooCommerce shopping area, you'll find it's listed as Google Analytics Pro, and it will do enhanced e-commerce. Make sure there are potentially other ones that have popped up. Make sure they have the ability to do enhanced e-commerce. One of the ones we talked about yesterday, as of last I checked, and they may have changed it just recently. Monster Analytics only did for WooCommerce regular e-commerce tracking. They were not doing enhanced e-commerce tracking. So you just double check whichever one you're using that it has the ability to do enhanced e-commerce tracking. And you'll see why here as we go through why that's really important to have. If you use Easy Digital Downloads, which is another WordPress plugin, popular shopping cart, you can use third-party extensions, but there also is a EDD, Enhanced E-Commerce Tracking, from a place called Shop Plugins that also does the enhanced e-commerce tracking. And then with Shopify, you literally can just turn it on and it will work. I don't know if that link at the bottom still works, so don't use that link. I actually pulled this slide here from another place that I had it. So just don't go to that site to look up. I'll send it over to you at the end of this presentation. All right. So once you've set the code up, you have to enable e-commerce tracking inside of Google Analytics. And so that's going to be done at the view level. And when you go to view, you'll be able to go in and it's under the settings. When you turn it on, you'll start being able to track e-commerce. Now, if you want to track enhanced e-commerce settings, you also have to enable that as well. And then within here, you actually have the ability to add different funnel steps. Your plugin will walk how to set up the different funnel steps to be able to be used with that particular plugin, because each one is different for checkout labeling. So it will walk you through how to set those up. But I do want to come back and say, make sure you enable this inside Google Analytics. We have I have a lot of people who install the plugin, and then they contact me and say, hey, I set this up, but I don't see it yet inside my analytics. You have to go into analytics and turn this on. So make sure that you do that. You also, once you turn on inside of Google Analytics, make sure that you also turned it on inside the plugins. So those different plugins and Shopify, they need to know that you've enabled enhanced e-commerce tracking. If you enable enhanced e-commerce tracking inside of Google Analytics, but not inside the plugin, it'll actually not work properly and not track your regular e-commerce either. So make sure that both you mark it as enhanced e-commerce inside of both. That is a very important step that I do want to mention. So all those different items we talked about, where do we find them? Once you've enabled e-commerce, it's going to be under the conversion standard report. You see right there, we have goals listed. Well, then we have e-commerce. This is that new section that we've basically enabled, and that we're able now to see what's going on. You'll see under there we have all these standard reports now with the enhanced version. We have the overview, we have shopping analysis, which when you open that up, you have checkout analysis and so forth. You also have the sales performance, product performance, and even a marketing tab, which is going to be for your coupon codes and your affiliate links. So the biggest thing everyone wants to know, where's my revenue? Jump right into overview on the e-commerce section, and we'll be able to see the revenue. So this is really cool because you'll notice this is an exact dollar amount. This is not an estimation. We're able to see the number of transactions that happened, the average order value, but we can see all of that information right here on this screen. This really allows us to kind of visualize daily performance of our site. The other really cool thing about revenue, when you enable e-commerce tracking, is it pulls over into all the other standard reports. So now when you're going through the rest of your Google Analytics, the revenue is found throughout many of these different standard reports, right? So you have acquisition, behavior, conversions. If you look under conversions, we're able to see the exact amount of revenue. And we can also see the e-commerce conversion rate and the number of transactions. So what makes this really, really cool is I'm able now to tell you that my referral traffic on this site, which I believe this is the Google demo shop, I'm able to tell you that the referral traffic brought in $95,000. Organic search brought in $60,000. Direct traffic brought in $28,000, and paid search only brought in $3,500. This is really great to be able to visualize these different traffic channels, or you can even go and look based off of my other favorite one is looking at how much money came in from mobile versus desktop, and so forth. So now you can actually relate all the different dimensions and metrics that we talked about earlier, or dimensions, over to the revenue metric, which is really a great way to see it. This also allows you to pull this information directly into Google Data Studio, which is going to be part 3 that we're going to cover tomorrow, how to pull all that and create some really fancy looking dashboards that have all this information. Average order value is also found under the e-commerce overview. This is really great because if you have the ability to add multiple products to your cart, understanding how much when an order is going to come in, understanding how much that average order value is nice. That's where you can add, decide to try to get some more upsells or add in some other items to try to bump that little higher to get a little bit of extra revenue coming in. Product performance. This is really great because you're able to come in here and you see there's a lot of data we have pulling in. We have sales performance, we have some shopping behavior stuff coming into this report, and we can actually look and see what products are performing, how well they're performing, and so forth. You have the ability to see unique purchases. You can see average refund amount is actually pulled in here, but a lot of this different information. But I really like the shopping behavior section. Shopping behavior section allows us to see how many people went from the cart to look at the details and how many went from buy to detail. So we can kind of see the different shopping behaviors coming in on a product level if we want. Time to purchase. This is actually really interesting to know how long did it take people to come back and purchase. So this tracks based off of user data. Google will normally hold the session data. I think default is 90 days. You can change that time inside your settings, but we're able to actually kind of dive down and see how many people made a purchase right that day versus how many people waited and how long did they wait. And so we see most of the people on this one are making the purchase the same day. And there are some other people who look like they've been coming back a lot because they purchased from the 12 to 30 day mark. So this is a great way to see how long it takes somebody to make that decision to purchase. All right, so let's kind of jump into what shopping behavior is on here. So this is the shopping behavior report. You'll notice this is actually set up as a funnel, so we can kind of see how it goes down. You'll notice under no shopping activity, there's actually a break in there, so it's showing that it goes way up there. It's 74,000, and then only 18% move on to a product view. And so forth. So all sessions is 74,000, and there's no shopping activity. And then it goes over to sessions with product views. So they've actually looked at a product, and then you have no cart addition. So that's where I dropped off. and then you have 38% of those who turn around and went to sessions to add to their cart, and then you have cart abandonment, or you have 36% of those people who jumped over to a checkout, and then you have the checkout abandonment, and then you actually have sessions with transactions. So to kind of give that real, this is kind of listing out what those different things, what they mean. So no shopping activity means obviously they have not started any kind of activity that showed shopping on your website. They haven't looked at a product. They haven't done anything. They literally sat in your blog article or on your homepage and didn't go anywhere else. No cart addition obviously just means they didn't add anything to their cart. Cart abandonment is when they've added something to your cart, but then they decided not to finish the checkout process. So this is the people who added into the cart and then walk away and hopefully come back, but don't always come back. There's actually some really cool plugins out there. Just to bring up a side note, there's some really cool plugins out there for cart abandonment that'll do it. And I'm sure you all have seen it when you've added stuff to carts at other places that you get an email 2 days later with a 10% or 5% off, 10% off coupon. They're like, come back and finish your purchase. There's some really cool plugins, even for WooCommerce out there for cart abandonment. So I do suggest checking those out if your cart abandonment rate is high. Now, Google Analytics will tell you if your cart abandonment rate is high, and so you can then find out if that's going to work for you. And then using, just take it back one more step, using annotations when you set up your new plugin, you can actually view your cart abandonment rate, and you can set up an annotation of when you install that plugin and see if your cart abandonment rate goes down. Checkout abandonment, they started actually checking out, but they did not complete this. This can happen if their credit card fails for any reason, or maybe they can't find their payment information or anything like that. You do see checkout abandonments a lot higher on mobile devices usually than you do desktop, just because people don't feel like typing all that information into their phone. Sometimes they'll go switch over to a desktop and come back to your website. But just that's what those different items mean. And you can kind of measure it and change device types and all that to see what's going on by creating custom reports that pull those information in. All right, so checkout behavior. Checkout behavior is very similar to shopping behavior, but now we're looking at the actual checkout funnel. Now, if you use WooCommerce's one page, there's a feature they have that's one page checkout where everything's on the one page. You won't have as many of these. A lot of times with checkout, you'll actually have where they go to billing, then they fill out the shipping section, then they go to another section, it's the payment section, then the review, are you sure you want to buy this? And then you go to section transactions. Your checkout funnel may not be as big as this, depending on how your system's set up. If you have one page checkout enabled, usually they go to the checkout page and then they hit buy and they're done. And everything's all on the one page. So that would make this a very basic checkout step, but these are the different steps you have. And so these are great for really kind of looking at all of these and figuring out where people are falling off. Now, this is where we talk. These are considered conversion funnels. We're following people through their checkout. You can apply this to other funnels as well. If you have goal funnels turned on, which, as I said yesterday, I'd highly suggest you don't turn those on. Use a system called Hotjar to set up your funnels. But once you realize that you have a huge drop-off on one of your funnels, what we want to do is we need to figure out why it's happening. So when we look here, we see that shopping and checkout behavior, we need to identify where people are falling off. And so we have a huge drop-off from sessions with product views and session with ad carts. But if we had like a major drop-off that happened here around checkout or transactions, we may want to look at it a little more in depth. So I look at it this way. We have a whole bunch of people who not only added an item to cart, but started their checkout, but only 58% actually completed the transaction. So we had 40% of the people, or 41%, actually abandoned the checkout procedure after they've already not only added things to the cart, but started going through the process, and they never finished the transaction. So for me, that's something I want to kind of look into and understand, why is this happening? Why did they drop off? Why are they not finishing their purchase? So what we want to do is we're going to want to identify common causes. We're going to want to do a bug check, maybe even do an on-page survey, heat map, visitor recording, A/B testing. We got to find out why they're dropping off. And so the common causes of why people drop off. So if you have like no cart addition, check your add cart button is working. Also make sure it's easy to find. There's some sites that I found the product and I couldn't figure out how to add it to my cart. I was like, I want to buy this, but you don't make this easy for me to figure out how to buy this from you. If they're abandoning the shopping cart, they might have found a better price, or maybe they forgot to come back after they went out shopping for a better price. So if your price seems kind of high, they might run off. If you may have a lowest prices guaranteed added onto there, or something along that line, something to make them feel better about not leaving and come back. If they are leaving and they are leaving and abandoning, look at using shopping cart abandonment plugins to bring them back to the site. Now, with checkout abandonment, this is where you might want to check your user interface. Maybe they got lost, or maybe you presented them an unexpected cost or high shipping. So that's where that checkout funnel comes into play. If a lot of people are dropping off when they get to the shipping page, that means that they got to a spot where they expected the shipping price to be lower than what you actually charge. If they were buying a $5 item and you turn around and said, awesome, it's $20 in shipping, they're going to freak out and they might have left there. So that kind of gives you an idea of where they're falling off. So they're falling off on the shipping page. Let's go look at the shipping rates and let's go see if there's something wrong there. Maybe they couldn't pick the type of shipping they wanted. Maybe your product is something that people need right away and you don't offer one-day shipping or something along those lines. It just allows you to better analyze that and understand what's going on. The other thing is it might be too hard for them to figure out what they're doing. I actually had somebody who their site, people were bailing on their site because they couldn't find the box to check that said I agree, because surprisingly they put the checkout button and then they put some other call to action or something along that page, which there shouldn't have been another call to action to begin with, because you're just trying to get them to check out. You're not trying to get them to do anything else. And then way down the bottom, there was a checkbox that says, I agree to the terms of service. And so whenever they click checkout, say you have to agree to terms of service, and they couldn't find it. So check your UX, see what's going on if you have a high checkout abandonment, because they've already made the decision to not only put in their shopping cart, but start checking out, and then they quit on you. Also, check for bugs. Run through, do a full QC of the steps where you see a huge amount of drop-offs. Change browsers. Now, this is where you go back to with using Google Analytics and pulling this data in. We can combine the different data that we have inside there. So you saw us earlier where we created that browser report inside of the custom reports. If we created a custom report and related it, or a custom segment, and we looked at all the people with the different browsers with analytics and combine that data to see that 100% of the people using Internet Explorer are dropping off at this step, well, then that's obvious. Internet Explorer, there's an issue there. For some reason, Internet Explorer cannot get past that step. So maybe we need to browser test that section and see what's going on with Internet Explorer and why is it not working, and then have our developers go in and try to fix that. So that's where, when I talk about analytics and thinking outside the box of what you can do with it, it's not just for going in and just seeing how many people went to your website. You can combine that data together to discover issues that are happening on your website that will help to increase your sales. Most people don't realize that maybe a certain browser is not being able to complete the purchases. So that's why we combine everything, and we think outside the box, and we look at all these different items, and we create even dashboards that will show us this type of stuff, which again we'll talk about tomorrow. On-page surveys. If there's a certain point of the funnel where everyone's dropping off, maybe you go ahead and put a little page survey that says, hey, how can we help? Or you're looking for something we don't have, or do you need assistance? How can we improve? Let them tell you. This is where you get to the qualitative versus quantitative, right? Quantitative is going to be with your Google Analytics. It's going to be showing you the numbers where people are dropping off. Qualitative is where they actually come in and they tell you why they're dropping off, right? So on-page surveys is going to kind of give us that information, allow us to really understand why they dropped off at that certain point, and we can ask those questions. Again, a service that I use for my on-page surveys is Hotjar. They do heat maps, they do on-page surveys, they do screen recording, do a lot of that kind of cool stuff. So if you want to check it out, it's hotjar.com. They have a free version and they have a paid version. But definitely check them out as well if you want to kind of dive into some of this information. But again, we use the Google Analytics to determine where these drop-off points are, and then we use these other tools to then determine why they're dropping off. Heat maps. Again, heat maps is letting us learn what is being clicked. We can find cold spots, where they're looking at, where they're reading. This does it by tracking their mouse movements. Most people still read with the mouse, and it's kind of going away a little bit as more laptops are used because people don't use their trackpad as much when they're reading. But if they have a mouse hooked to their machine, they are using their mouse still, and it kind of looks at that to see where the hot spots are on your page. Visitor recordings is another way that you can actually watch to see what's going on. This is really good you see their mouse movements. You can identify where they're pausing for a long time. You can identify lost visitors. Those are the people who just like keep moving the mouse around. This is one of the ways we figured out that I agree button was an issue, because we saw people get the error in the visitor recording that showed, hey, can't find you, or you need to agree to the terms, and then we just watch their mouse just wander through the whole page. It's actually kind of funny. And then like you'll notice the second they find it, their mouse moves real quick, clicks it, and then moves on. So it was obvious that was the holdup. And then what's fun to watch was how many people. Well, it was fun for me. It wasn't fun for the customer. Was to watch, or for our client, to watch how many people got there, started kind of wandering around, and then exited the page and didn't complete their purchase because they never found the box. So for us, it was great insight. The client was not pleased, but was very happy we did find that for them, because we were able to convert a lot more after that. This is also a good place to look for bugs. We found a bug with PayPal using this with one of our services, that if you selected PayPal on a certain browser, an error popped up that we could never see, and nobody ever sent it to us. Like 1% of the people who come to your site will ever actually screenshot an error that they get and tell you that they got an error. Most of them will just leave. They will never come back and buy the product. They'll say, oh, give me an error. I'll go somewhere else and buy the product. So that allowed us to see the error that somebody was getting, and it was on a specific browser when you selected to use PayPal as your payment method on this specific page. We would have never found the bug. It was so quick to fix. I sent it over to our development team. 5 minutes later, it was fixed. It was working, and we started getting a ton more conversions. And so even on that one, that was one of those ones I would have never even found with Google Analytics, because Google Analytics still showed that that particular browser was converting, but it was converting because people were using credit cards through the credit card processor, not clicking PayPal. And so that was a good area there. And that's actually a good point of where you could actually set a custom dimension. You can set a custom dimension that gets set at that point that says if they're using credit card or if they're using PayPal or whatever processor they're using, because then you could actually use that custom dimension, set up a custom report that looks at the custom dimension and says people using IE that have a custom dimension set of PayPal as their processor are not completing any purchases, and then you're able to dive in a little bit more. So there's a good example of another example of where custom dimensions can come into play. A/B testing. There's Optimizely. There's VWO. Google actually has released a product that's getting really good, and it's free, called Google Optimize. And it integrates directly in to your Google Analytics under Experiments. I highly suggest playing with that first. Optimizely and VWO are more enterprise options. They do have a pretty hefty price tag attached to them, but you can do running some A/B tests. They integrate well with Mixpanel and Kissmetrics. They don't integrate very well with Google Analytics, unfortunately. But if you use Google Optimize obviously integrates very well with Google Analytics. So you can definitely check that one out as well. So what else can you use all of this data from the e-commerce side for? One of my biggest things I always tell people is you can develop new products from this. When you look here, you can see what people are buying and how many unique purchases are happening from this. So you can actually see that you have 147 people that want Google sunglasses. So maybe you should look at coming out with a couple other variations of sunglasses and see how they're doing. But use these to figure out what products that you should offer, and maybe there's certain variants to sell better. So you can figure out what those are. Like if you start noticing a trend that everything that is in the color blue is selling better, maybe you should try and offer a blue variant for other products you have and see how well those are doing. You can also understand your marketing spend. So here we have um, for Google AdWords, we're pulling in the search query, the keywords there, and we're able to actually look across and see the e-commerce sections. This also goes back to what we were talking about with channel reporting and seeing, how many people from social or even your UTMs. You can actually use your UTMs. I think this is what this report is based off, is UTMs here. You can actually see what marketing efforts you're doing and how many transactions and what the conversion rate is on that, because as we said before, e-commerce gets pulled into all other standard reports as well, so that you can pull it in anywhere else that you can pull in goals or conversions. You can pull in as e-commerce, and if you notice right up in the see if I can get my mouse, yeah, there it goes. You have a drop-down box. You can actually switch this between goals and e-commerce. So if you're an e-commerce site, you always want your conversions to be based off e-commerce. If you're a goals-oriented site and you're not doing e-commerce, you can set it to goals. All right, so that concludes up the e-commerce section. And that's going to actually be the last item we're going to cover for today's sections. So I do want to open up questions, whether it be based on the e-commerce or based on any of the other items that we talked about today or yesterday. I'd love to hear your questions at this time.
All right, so we have about 4 questions stacked up here for you, Chris. Folks, if you have not yet asked your questions, now's the time to do that over in the chat room, and we'll get those asked to Chris before we wrap up today. Steve would like to know, he says, if I have Monster Insights set up, can I have Google Analytics Pro as well to have enhanced e-commerce, or should I do one or the other?
That's a great question. I don't think the two of those work together. So I think you would need to probably scrap Monster Insights if you're using it that way. And that, yeah, I don't, because the way Monster Insights inputs the code, you would end up getting double showings on those pages, I believe.
Gotcha. Good advice. This is a good question from Rebecca. She'd like to know, is there a best method to track offline to online campaigns and conversions? So, for example, she sends a postcard that says visit, mydomain.com/special link, and that URL redirects to something else. How would you suggest setting that sort of thing up?
All right, yes. So I said my favorite thing about analytics is UTMs. You can do UTMs by using a URL shortener, such as Bitly. With Bitly, you can actually set up custom URLs. So this is actually interesting. I don't have any in these slides. Our old name for our company used to be CE Squared. I haven't found a really cool one. It's for Data Driven Labs yet, but we owned ce2.io is our domain name. And with Bitly, we were able to use their URL shortener service. And it was 100% free. We were able to use their URL shortener service and map ce2.io to be our own URL shortener, so that I could actually put ce2.io / iThemes webinar, and that would go to wherever I want, and that URL that it would go to, I would put a UTM inside that URL. So that's how you could do that, is by using a service such as Bitly. If you map your own URL, you can make it look fancy, or you can just use Bitly's URL and put it on there. And you can actually put that onto the postcard and have that Bitly URL going to a URL on your site that has that UTM code attached. And that UTM code you'd put in your source, your medium, and so forth to track that.
Gotcha. And did you say that Monster Insights Pro has enhanced e-commerce reporting?
I haven't looked at it. I'll be honest with you. I haven't looked at it in probably the last 8 months. I know that talking with Chris that they were working on adding that in. Chris is the lead developer on that project. He was working on adding that in. So I don't know if he's added it yet or not. You'd have to actually check the plugin and see if it has enhanced e-commerce added.
Gotcha. Let's see. Randy would like to know, when you were talking about the product performance information, is that information that you only get that after you set up the plugin or code, correct? It doesn't go backwards.
Correct. It will only all e-commerce settings will only track once the code has been installed. It will not be backwards compatible.
Got it. And he'd like to know that once he gets that set up, where does Google get all those values? Does that come from the plugin itself or the code?
Yes, so the code's pushing that through. There's a whole bunch of different code in there. Manually implementing e-commerce, your developers will love you if they had to manually do it. It's a pretty in-depth process to send all that data in. But basically, those plugins they pull that data in and send it over. So they send over all that is coming from like WooCommerce or Shopify. They're sending each of those parameters. It's similar to how custom dimensions work, but it's specifically built for the e-commerce section.
Fantastic. And looks like Ben found a link where Monster Insights does have enhanced e-commerce reporting. So you guys can check that out.
Perfect.
The link is there in the chat room. Robert would like to know, can you elaborate on the scope for custom dimensions and custom metrics? When specifically should hit and product and things like that be used?
So when you should use hit session and user is really based off of what you want to track. So I'm going to go back to the example of what I use. One of the biggest things I'm using it for right now, which is tracking those who are picking a doctor to check out with. I do a session-based one on that one, and that's because they may come onto our site today looking for a certain doctor, and so they search, and then we pull that custom dimension over for relating that hospital for the rest of their session, so it sticks. Once we hit the code once and say this is the hospital it's associated, it stays associated for the rest of that session. But if they come back later that night because they realize that they want to look for a different doctor for whatever reason, I don't want that to be stuck to their account. I want that session so it's now cleared and it's going to create a new session and associate it to that. If you associate it to the user, it wouldn't have worked. It'd still be stuck at the original. And then the same difference if you worked with the hit, it would only have been associated on that exact page view. So when they went to that second page to finish the appointment checkout process, we would have lost that data. So it really comes down to what you're trying to do with it. But in that particular application, session's what I want to stick. A lot of times with custom dimensions, I think you're going to stick with session. There's very few ones where I've actually stuck with hit. There's also very few ones where I've actually attached it 100% to a user.
Gotcha. Robert, if that answered your question, hopefully, if not, just ask a follow-up there in the chat and we'll get over to it. This is our last question up, so if you've not asked your question and you still would like to do that, please do so in the chat room. Steve wanted to know, would a messed up funnel possibly be caused by enhanced e-commerce not being set up correctly? For example, I have one session with a checkout and 835 sessions with transactions.
That's possible. Yes, that's definitely possible that it's not set up right. The other thing that's possible is they might be coming into that page from somewhere else. So you need to check your funnel and see, is there another way they're coming into that that they can complete a transaction without going through your funnel. And the only last thing I can say is if you're hitting it via the API, there is a way you're able to upload e-commerce analytics through the API. There's certain plugins. Give Donation plugin does this where it can upload through the API as well. And so you could just be uploading, pushing data in through the API and not actually having the purchases happen on the site. So it's one of those you'd have to really dive in and take a look. But the one thing I would say is see if there's any other way they can complete a transaction without going through a page that you're tracking on. And then if you're using a plugin to do it, double check, maybe look at switching to a different plugin and trying a different plugin to see if it works better and you're getting better results from it. Because that plugin may not be tracking correctly on the other two pages, or the previous pages in the funnel.
All right, very good. We have a few minutes left here. There's kind of a general question that came in from Eric about reviewing the goal setup. Chris, can we take the last few minutes here and just review how to set up a goal like we discussed yesterday?
Yes. All right. let's go to, I actually have to pull up one of my accounts to do this for permission levels. All right, so your goals are listed under here. If you don't have any goals set up, when you click on overview, it will, when it loads up, it'll actually tell you to go set up a goal if you don't have goals set up. But since we already have goals set up, what you're going to do is come down here to admin. And then you're going to come over here to your view. So we have the account, the property, and the view. Remember, goals are attached to the views, not to the property. So make sure you have the right one. So with mine, I have my unfiltered view. I don't actually have a test view, which I told you all yesterday you should have, and I don't have one on this site, which I probably should. But we have our unfiltered view, and we have our filtered view. Everything I do is out of this filtered view. So we're going to go ahead and just select that one. And then you have goals. When you click on goals, it's going to pull up your current one. So we have lead submissions here. It's already a goal that I have set up, but I'm going to go ahead and create new goal. And then it has this template stuff here. I ignore this. Honestly, this it's supposed to help you get through this, but it gets in my way. So I always just go to custom. And I come over here and I create my goal name. So we'll call this test goal. Normally you wouldn't change this because it's going to pick the next one. But because I'm creating this and I lose this slot for doing this, and I may use that one later. I'm going to go ahead and just set it here because I'm never going to have 20 goals on my site. And then this is where we have destination, duration, pages, or event. So if you want to set it based off of the destination, you will select destination, and we'd hit continue. And this is where I can say that the destination equals, and if we start to type, it'll actually fill out. It won't actually on this one. So what we want to do is we want to find, so let's say I want to track people who landed on my SEO page, which as horrible as this sounds, I don't know what the exact URL is to it, so just say SEO. There's something in front of it, but I think it's like products or something. So we'll say equals to products and this SEO, and then we can verify this goal, which it's not going to verify because that's not a real URL here. So we'll actually just pull up the site real quick and see the URL. I will do this page. This will be faster for me to find. All right, so we're going to copy this page right here. Come back, put this in here, and then when I hit verify, re-verify goal, see I have 0.34% conversion rate over the past 7 days. So that means 0.34% of my traffic went to that page. And so if I want to assign a value, I could assign a value to that. A funnel, I can actually assign a funnel. I can actually say that step one, so this is if you have a funnel to get to this page, we can actually say step one is homepage. And so that's when I went to the homepage, which is just slash. And then they went to, technically they go straight to this page, but they went to a different page. We can say second page. And this could be, step two and so forth. And then we can actually create this little funnel inside here if we wanted to track this, or you can just turn this off, not track that. So this is how you do a destination base. So if you have a thank you page or something, this is off the page view. But if you're pulling it off of a event, you would actually select event. And now we have the category action label equals items. And so if we were to open up our behavior reports, so we're going to do that, what I told about earlier, hold down the command key and come down here and go to events and overview. So I can open a new window here. I can actually come in here and say, come on, Alex, load up for me today. We can actually say event category equals UTM generator. So I'll copy that, come back over here and say event category equals UTM generator. I don't care what the action value or any of that could be for this one. Hit re-verify. Oh, there's 0.34%. So you'll see you can actually set this to be equal to, and you can also set an action if you wanted, a label, or any of these other items, or you can not set a category and just set a label or action. But you pick which one of these, and that's going to track that as a goal. You can use the event value for the goal conversion, or you can set your own value, or not set a value at all. I don't normally set values on these because I don't assign values to a lot of these goals, but that's how you would set these up if you wanted to. And then, of course, you'd save it, and the goal would be set up. I'm not going to save this one, though, but that's how you can set those up. And I'll show you one I have working here, our lead submission one. So this is actually one that's set up to be based off of an event, and it's set when the category begins with form, and the action is successful. The action equals successful submission, so it pulls those. And if you remember when we were looking over here, you had those under here. So form, contact us, and form service inquiry. And when you pull those up, you'll see the different actions. We have successful submission. And so it's pulling anything that comes in there as a goal. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's a great overview. Yeah, absolutely. Good deal. That answered Eric's question. Appreciate that. My own worst enemy, one last question here. Any idea why two goals to the same destination with and without a funnel would have exactly the same results?
Can you repeat that again?
Why would two goals to the same destination with and without a funnel would have the exact same results?
Okay. That's actually a great question. And so I do want to touch on that. So the funnel, all the funnel does is it helps you to view a funnel inside the goals report. The funnel does not, it's not a requirement for the goal to happen. So that I actually ran into this one time with a different client, and did a lot of research on this to come up with this. But when you have set, no, we don't want to mess with that. When you set that goal funnel and you hit that required piece, all you're doing inside of there is you're telling the goal funnel under the conversion reports. So when you're under here, goals, and you have funnel visualization, all that required thing is doing is just telling this if it's going to build out this funnel, if it will show up inside here, which I don't have a funnel built for this, so it's not going to show up. But you'll see it's not going to show up. It doesn't. How do I say? It's not. It will still track the goal being completed, regardless if the funnel's completed or not. It'll track the goal being completed. So the funnel is only just for funnel visualization only. It's just a view. So no matter, so in that case, I would almost get rid of one of the goals and just keep the funnel visualization, because it's going to convert one way or the other, regardless if they go through that funnel or not.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. I believe that comes to the end of our questions today, and we're right at just a little after 3 o'clock. So, Chris, thanks for another great day of information. Tell us what we're going to talk about tomorrow.
So tomorrow's going to be focused on Google Data Studio dashboards. And so we're going to teach you how to basically create your own custom dashboard that you can visualize and see and pull from multiple sources, such as Facebook or any of these other places, and pull different data in and visualize all of that in a very easy to read dashboard. You don't have to be a designer. You don't have to be a developer. We're going to show you how this is really simple and really easy for you to make and impress your clients, your stakeholders, your bosses, or even just yourself. So we're going to go over that tomorrow, walk through real quickly how you set one up. And then in addition, we are going to then dive in a little more deep of how to apply filters and do really cool in-depth stuff with it.
Fantastic. All right, so we're coming back up at 1 o'clock tomorrow, 1 o'clock Central Time. We'll be back here, and hope to see you back then for day 3 of the Google Analytics Summit. We'll have the recording up. Give us a couple hours. We'll have the recording back on this same page where the chat room is located, as well as the slides from today. The chat log may take a little longer, but we'll should surely have that up by tomorrow. So thanks again for hanging out with us for the last couple hours. Thank you again, Chris, and we'll see you tomorrow. back for day 3 here on iThemes Training, where we go further together.